right, welcome back to HerCanary. I think that I have rewritten this episode at least 5 times, and I'm not exaggerating. I've even recorded a couple. The first version sounded like a diary entry, and the second one sounded like I had become some kind of neuroscience professor overnight. It was all about nervous systems and cortisol and co-regulation, and I was reading it back thinking, who wrote this? And then there was this version that I actually cried through half of, which turns out is really difficult to edit. So this week, I just hit this really weird wall because I'm realizing something I didn't expect when I started this podcast. Every episode I write is my real life. And that sounds obvious until your real life involves other people. People you care about, people that you date, people that you're still trying to understand. And suddenly you're asking yourself this impossible question. How do I tell my story without accidentally telling someone else's for them? I've been wrestling with it a lot the last couple weeks. I never wanted this podcast to become a place where I processed other people's lives for them. I wanted it to be a place where we could get curious about each other and, more importantly, curious about ourselves. And it's much harder than I thought. Because the experiences that are like living in like the ecosystem that is my body and my heart involve other people's hearts too. So to be really careful, you know, like when someone hurts us, our instinct is to like point the camera at them. Look what they did. Look what they said. Look how they didn't show up for me. Look what happened. The more interesting story is usually what's happening inside of us. So I've been trying to sit with that. And while I've been trying to figure out what this episode was actually about, life just kept happening. These last couple weeks have been so busy. I've had so many really pretty interactions. I went to this Taylor Swift night with a room full of women who I'd never met before. I took a trip with one of my closest friends. Another friend showed up in my driveway after working an exhausting 12-hour shift carrying flowers just to hug me for 15 minutes before she went home. And at that exact same time, I was carrying around this level of really deep sadness. Some of it was about relationships and the uncertainty in them. Some of it wasn't, though. A lot of it, if you know me, you know that a couple years ago, I had this spinal injury that almost left me paralyzed. And I'm very bubbly and active. And so sometimes it's hard to tell the things that are actually going on inside me. People usually think about the surgery or the pain or the recovery, and they don't really think about the grief that this comes with. Because I didn't just lose a healthy neck or shoulders or body. I lost my career. I lost this identity that I had poured years into building and suffering for. I was a union carpenter and I loved it. Not every minute of it, but I loved what it meant. I loved building things and I loved being underestimated. I loved earning respect in spaces where I wasn't expected to belong in. I found a family in the trades, you know? I really sacrificed for that career. And then one day it was just over. And nobody really teaches you how to grieve a version of yourself that's still alive. So I've been carrying all of this heaviness, you know? Trying to write and trying to make sense of it and trying to be strong and trying to be everyone's pillar. And if I'm being honest, I started believing something. I started believing that pillars don't get landing pads. That if you're the dependable one, you don't really get to fall apart because who the fuck is going to catch the person who everyone else leans on? And that, I thought, was what this episode was going to be about. But then I started noticing something. Or maybe I finally stopped arguing with what my life had been trying to tell me all along. I've been reading this book called The Light Eaters, okay? And ironically, it was recommended to me by someone that I had dated previously. Things didn't work out between us, but I actually kind of love it as an example still. You know, I don't love the heartache part of it. Although, you know, Taylor Swift has built an entire career convincing us that there's a lot of character development in it. No, I love that people can leave your life and still leave you with something beautiful. Sometimes these people we cross paths with aren't meant to stay forever. Sometimes they're just meant to hand us a new lens. And this book was one of those lenses. It completely hijacked my brain. It's about plants. This is actually about us. One of the ideas that this book explores is that there's something called the mycelium network. And beneath the forest floor, there are these underground fungal networks connecting plants. I actually have an episode that I'm developing that will go further into it because I think it's so cool. But the fungal network is connecting these plants and trees, and scientists are still studying exactly how these networks work and what kinds of signals move through them. And there's still a lot that we don't know. But here's what fascinates me. The forest is connected in ways that we cannot see. Before anything changes above ground, something underneath has already been acknowledged and noticed and is interacting, you know? I haven't been able to stop thinking about it because I wonder, I have this theory. I think people are a little bit like forests. I think we're constantly communicating with each other without ever saying a word. We notice when our friend's laugh sounds a little bit different, and we notice when someone says, "I'm fine," a little too quickly. We notice when the texts get shorter, when they leave the group chat, when they suddenly don't have energy for the things that they used to, the things that they used to love. We're constantly absorbing each other. And our bodies notice before our brains ever do. I think that's what I've been trying to understand a lot lately is our nervous systems are paying attention all the time. They're reading tone, they're reading facial expression, silence, consistency, the feeling we get when someone walks into a room and the feeling we get when they leave it. And that's the crazy part. I think our bodies usually know what's happening long before our minds are willing to admit it, because our minds are these incredible storytellers. Like, oh my gosh, our brains are like these little defense attorneys. They'll argue anything. He's probably busy. She's probably tired. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe I expected too much. Our brains are over here filing appeals. Meanwhile, our nervous system is sitting quietly in the corner going, "Hey, I've been trying to get your attention for like 3 weeks now." And I don't think that we listen. I mean, at least I don't. I think I spent a lot of my life trying to outthink my own body, trying to explain away the knot in my stomach, trying to intellectualize sadness and trying to earn certainty instead of listening to discomfort. And here's the thing, I'm not talking about romantic relationships. I know a lot of times the topic will surround that lately because I've been actively dating, but it's not about romantic relationships. It's about all of them. All of our relationships, because once I started paying attention, I realized something I couldn't unsee. It wasn't the people who disappointed me that my nervous system was reacting to. Well, it wasn't just them anyways. It was also the people who made me exhale. I think we spend so much time talking about red flags that we forget to pay attention to the green ones, the people who make your shoulders drop a little, and the people you don't have to perform around, the ones who don't make you wonder where you stand. And the people who quietly make room for you, make space for you, make time. And it's not because they have to, and it's not because you've earned it. It's because they love you. And when I started looking for those people and paying more attention for them, I realized they'd been here with me the whole time. My little sister she's 18. One of them is anyway, which is such a strange age because you're old enough that the world starts asking you these adult questions, but you're young enough that your body hasn't experienced very much of them. Hopefully you haven't, No one's handed you the answers yet. And then my other sister, I call her Bug. She did something is so cool because no other woman in our family has done it yet. So we have to pause for a second. So if you're listening, Bug, big snaps, because I don't think she fully understands what she did. Generations before her had to rent or needed permission from their partner, and she did it solo. She bought a home. She made it work. She sacrificed. Her work ethic is incredible. We get it from our mama. If you know, you know. But here she is, and she's changing the trajectory. I am so unbelievably proud of her. So after closing on her house, all of us girls had a sleepover. And honestly, it's one of those nights that I hope I don't forget. We stayed up way too late. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. And at one point, the girls started asking me relationship questions. One's like, how do you know if someone really likes you? How do you know if they're worth your time? And I caught myself reaching for answers I've heard 1,000 times. Watch for the red flags. Don't ignore your inner standards. Communicate. Don't settle. And that's all good advice. But none of it felt like the thing I actually wanted to leave them with. So later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I kept thinking about it. If in 20 years from now, my little sister calls me, heartbroken, what do I hope she remembers? It's not going to be my opinions about some guy she was dating. Those won't matter. Not the checklist, not some color-coded list of the red flags I found on Instagram. I hope she remembers herself. I hope she knows what her own nervous system sounds like before the rest of the world gets loud. Because the world is going to have a lot to say. People will tell her she's too much or not enough, that she's too emotional or maybe too independent, too ambitious, too quiet, too forgiving, too intimidating. The world is so loud. And I don't want the world's voice to become louder than her own. So maybe if she ever asks me again, this is what I'll tell her. I don't want you to spend your life wondering if someone likes you. I don't even want you to spend your life wondering or asking whether or not you like them. I want you to ask a different question. Who do you become when you're with them? Not who are they, who are you? When you leave this person, friend or romantic partner or whatever relationship it is, when you leave them, do you feel bigger or smaller? Do you feel peaceful or like your brain immediately starts replaying every conversation? Do you trust yourself more or less? Do you laugh more? Do you create more? How's your sleep? Do you sleep better? Do you call your friends because you're excited to tell them about how happy you are about this person, or because you need help decoding them? One relationship is going to ask you to become a detective, and another will invite you to become yourself again. And I hope you learn the difference between the two. Because here's something that no one told me. It's that some relationships are really expensive. They're not financially, but emotionally. They cost you your sleep, your confidence, and your creativity, your appetite, your ability to be present with the people who actually love you. And sometimes the cost is gradual. You don't even notice what you're spending until you've completely exhausted all of your funds. I've realized that our nervous systems, they keep those receipts, even when our hearts are still negotiating. Our bodies have this incredible way of keeping score, and it's not to punish us, but it's to protect us. They're constantly asking, do I have to brace myself here, or is it safe to rest? Can I depend on this person? Can they depend on me? And maybe that's the greatest gift I could ever give my sisters, not the perfect advice, not a foolproof way to avoid a heartbreak, because heartbreak is just part of being alive. I can't protect them from that. I can't protect myself from that. But maybe I can help them become fluent in themselves. Because if you know what peace looks like, you know what peace feels like in your body, it's a lot harder for chaos to convince you it's love. And, as I'm processing and thinking about all this, I realized something that completely undid me. I've spent a lot of this year feeling like a pillar. I'm the oldest sibling. I'm usually the friend with the plan. I'm the one who says, okay, everyone stay calm. Here's what we're going to do. Which is really funny because internally I'm usually thinking I have absolutely no fucking idea what we're going to do. I just say it with confidence and figure it out as we go. Because that's adulthood, right? But somewhere along the way, I started believing something that wasn't true. I started believing that pillars don't get landing pads. That if you're the dependable one, you don't get to need people. You become the person that everyone else lands on. And if I'm really honest, there were moments this year where I thought, I don't think anyone's going to catch me. And that's a pretty lonely thought. And it felt really true. Even nowadays, sometimes I feel that way. And then I started replaying the last few months, not like the heartache pieces, not the disappointments, the people. I started remembering the little things, the things that are really easy to miss because they aren't dramatic, they're quiet. I remember my friend Bree, she's a canary too. After working one of the hardest shifts she had in a long time, her job was hard. Every night was a hard shift, but this was a 12-hour shift, right? And she could have just gone straight home. She had plenty of reasoning. I had said I wanted to be alone. She was exhausted, but she still stopped by. She brought me flowers. She drove to my house. She hugged me for probably 15 minutes. And before she left, she basically said, you don't have to entertain me. You don't even have to talk. I just wanted you to know that I'm here. Oh, I burst into tears. Someone showing up is like, especially when you say no, I don't know. She wasn't trying to fix me. She wasn't asking me to be okay. She was just making sure I didn't feel alone. And then we have, my roommate, Miss Danny Rue. We've taken these little trips together. Some of them because, we just needed the adventure and the space. Some of them were because she knew that my injury made certain things safer if I wasn't by myself. She never made me feel like a burden. She just showed up. Like it was never even a question. And then my sisters at that sleepover laughing until we couldn't breathe, talking about life, watching the next generation of women in my family do things that none of us have even imagined were possible. I kept thinking I was showing up for them, but I realized they've been showing up for me too. And then there's this Taylor Swift event, okay? Which, if you've never been to a Taylor Swift night, first of all, it's basically group therapy with glitter. I walked into this room full of women that I'd never met before. And within minutes, people are trading bracelets, complimenting each other's outfits, taking pictures of each other, screaming lyrics together. And then the song All Too Well came on. If you're a Swiftie, we're talking the 10-minute version. I look around the room and I realize something. I didn't know a single one of their stories. I didn't know who had been cheated on, who had lost someone, who was going through a divorce, who had cried in their car on the drive over here, or who was secretly hoping their ex would text them. I didn't know any of it, but somehow I felt all of it, you know? When we screamed those lyrics together, it wasn't because we all had the same story. It was because we all knew what it felt like to have some sort of story, some sort of ache. And I remember looking around and thinking, every single woman, and there were men too actually, and man, in this room has survived something that she thought or he thought was going to break them. Maybe they were currently surviving something. I know I was. And we're not all surviving the same thing, but it's something. We're all here, we're all laughing, we're all dancing, we're all trading bracelets and singing at the top of our lungs. It wasn't pretending that the pain never happened. It was proof that we all survived it. And that's when it hit me, the thing that I'd been trying to write this entire fucking episode. I kept saying I didn't feel like I had a real landing pad. I kept grieving this place that didn't exist. And I kept thinking, if I just had the right relationship, if I just found my person, then I'd finally have somewhere to land. But I was wrong. I had a landing pad this whole time. I just wasn't looking at it because it didn't look the way that I expected it to. It wasn't just one person. It was an entire network. It was flowers after a 12-hour shift. It was sisters asking me questions because they trusted me. It was a girl's trip to California on short notice. It was bracelet trades and women screaming lyrics that somehow belonged to all of us. It was hugs and coffee and checking in and making space. Tiny little moments that didn't seem like much until I realized they'd been catching me this whole time. I couldn't stop thinking about that forest again. The landing pad was there all along because forests don't survive because one tree is really strong. They survive because they're connected and intertwined with each other. Beneath the surface, there's this invisible network, and they're quietly sharing and quietly supporting and quietly responding. Most of the work you never even see. I think for a long time I thought strength meant carrying everything by myself. I thought being the oldest sister meant I was supposed to have the answers. I thought being dependable meant I wasn't allowed to fall apart. I thought love meant finding one person who would finally become like my safe space. One person, one landing pad, and one home. But life has a funny way of teaching us lessons that we weren't looking for. Because while I was grieving, while I was trying to figure out who I was without carpentry, without the career that I loved, without the certainty that I thought that I'd have by now, I wasn't actually alone. I was pretty surrounded. And that's embarrassing to admit. It makes me feel, a little ignorant because I was so focused on the love I thought I was missing that I almost overlooked the love that had been quietly showing up for me this whole time. I wonder how often we do that. How often we're staring at this one closed door while 10 other people are standing behind us saying, hey, we're right here. We got you. And maybe it doesn't look the way we imagined. Maybe it doesn't come wrapped in romance. Maybe it doesn't fit in the story we're told growing up. It doesn't make it any less real. When I was little, I think I believed that one day I'd meet someone and they'd become my home. And maybe one day I still will. I hope I do. Maybe I've already met them. Who knows? I haven't stopped believing in love. I'm much too much of a romantic for that. But I don't think it's fair anymore to ask one person to carry the weight of what an entire community was designed to hold. I don't think one person was ever supposed to be everything. I think we need friends who remind us who we are and sisters who ask us hard questions, people who bring flowers and people who tell us to come on the trip, people who notice when we're getting a little too quiet, and people who scream Taylor Swift lyrics beside us like they're handing us pieces of ourselves back. And maybe that's how women have always survived. We gather, we tell stories, we braid each other's hair, we sit on kitchen floors, and we cry in bathrooms. We make casseroles and we babysit each other's kids. We celebrate new homes, trade bracelets with strangers. We laugh until 2 a.m. and we become witnesses to each other's lives. That's not small. It's sacred. I think it's sacred. So if my little sister ever asked me again what she should be looking for, I think my answer has changed. Yes, pay attention to the person that you date. Notice how your nervous system feels around them. Notice whether they bring you peace. Notice whether they ask you to become smaller or whether they invite you to become more of yourself. Do not stop there. Look around. Who else is teaching your nervous system what safety feels like? Because sometimes the greatest love story happening in your life isn't the romantic one. Sometimes it's the women who refuse to let you fall. And maybe that's what my nervous system has been trying to tell me all along. It's not you're alone. It's not nobody's coming. It was trying to say, look around. They're already here. I started this episode thinking I was writing about, heartbreak. I thought I was writing about grief. Thought I was writing about maybe conflict in relationships. There's so many written episodes that are drafted now. But maybe what I was really writing was a thank you letter to my sisters, to my friends, to the women who have held me together, to the strangers who screamed all too well with me, like we were all carrying different stories, but somehow speaking the exact same language. Thank you, Thank you for becoming my landing pad before I even realized I had it. And, maybe that's why HerCanary has always been trying to become, not a place where one woman has all the answers, a place where women remind each other, you're not crazy and you're not too much and you're definitely not alone. Canaries were never meant to survive the mind themselves. They were meant to remind everyone else to pay attention. I think that's what we're doing here. We're quietly becoming part of each other's network, one story at a time. I'm really glad you guys are here, and I'll try to work out some of those slightly more emotional drafts I was working on. I'll see you guys next time. Night, Canaries.